Gavel, bang, 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 bang. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the notice and call of the special meeting of the Santa Clara City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our statement of value? I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
stands
one
one
nation,
nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call. Assistant City Clerk.
Councilmember Watanabe,
Here.
Vice Mayor Shahal,
Present.
Councilmember Hardy,
Present.
Councilmember Park,
Here.
Councilmember Jane,
Here.
Councilmember Becker,
Here.
Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
May I read the Statement of Behavioral Standards?
Yes, please.
The City of Santa Clara has adopted a code of ethics and values and behavioral standards for public meetings to promote and maintain the highest levels of conduct. This includes mutual respect, robust discussion, and allowing city business to be done in an efficient and consistent manner. Please note that as a presiding officer, the mayor's direction in matters of process and decorum should be followed, and that use of the gavel indicates all conversations must conclude and everyone in attendance should come to order and attention. Welcome and thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Assistant City Clerk. I'm not at City Hall, so I don't have with me the notice for the public. I hate to put you on the spot, but does someone have that handy that they can read that? If
Sure,
you're
just
at
a moment.
City Hall,
Let me
It's right on my desk. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
let me just pull it just a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's council meeting. The City of Santa Clara continues to take steps as we comply with the County of Santa Clara Public Health Department's orders and guidance to prevent and slow the spread of COVID-19. This includes social distancing, the use of face coverings, and frequent hand washing. For today's meeting, the city has implemented a Zoom feature to allow public participation from the safety of your home. Members of the public can join via the link and/or call in the Zoom meeting displayed on the screen now. If you would like to speak on an agenda item, please raise your hand on the Zoom application or press *9 on your phone. Please raise your hand while the item you're seeking to speak on is being presented. As a friendly reminder, members of the public have 2 minutes to speak on an agenda item. Prior to agenda item, staff will lower each hand to ensure members of the public are requesting to speak under the appropriate agenda item. You may also submit your comments on the e-comment feature available on the Santa Clara Legistar page or via public comment at santaclaraca.gov, and the comments will be read into the record. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Before we go to public comment, I just want to make a couple of statements, and I have also sent a letter to the city manager and the assistant city clerk, and I asked that the council be copied on it as well. And basically the gist of the letter says that we've had a lot of special meetings called, especially recently since the new council has been elected. And I believe that a lot of these special meetings, especially today, are on topics that are not really emergencies. that could be handled during regular city council meetings. So I'm concerned because the last special meeting that was called, I wasn't able to attend. Another city council member wasn't able to attend because we weren't given the opportunity to have any flexibility with the time. Even today, I don't have a lot of flexibility on the time because of my job. And so I'm just increasingly more concerned about these meetings that are called that could be handled. In fact, today's topic could have been handled on an open session meeting agenda item or at a regular council meeting. I'm concerned that all this new precedent being set is with all these new special meetings being called that we are really, abusing the charter provision that allows for council members to call a meeting, and it's supposed to be for really unique circumstances. So in looking at the actual requests for today's meeting, I question, just like I did the last meeting, were there actually requests for today's special meeting for the city attorney's performance evaluation, which we're basically going to talk about process? Was there actually a special request? And I could see with at least one, maybe two, it was, we need to do it. We need to do it immediately. And I think one council member actually specifically talked about the government codes of having that meeting. But there was a couple others that said, hey, I'm interested in putting this on another agenda. They didn't specifically say special meeting. So I am wondering, they wanted to get discussions going for the performance review agendized and let's schedule a performance review for a city attorney, but they didn't say special. And to me, these are emergency type meetings. So I sent this question to the city manager, a couple of questions that weren't really answered. One was, did 4 members of the council actually call for today's special meeting? So that's one question I had. Secondly, is this, could this not have been added to the next possible meeting agenda? And because of the nature of this item, and typically we do performance evaluations before the end of the year. So those are the questions that I really have, because if this 4 members of the council are calling special meetings on a regular basis, which it looks like it's happening, first of all, for those of us who work and are not going to be accommodated, had I not been accommodated for at least a half an hour, I would not have been able to attend today. And it's always disruptive to the public when they don't know what we're talking about. We're having meetings on days that are not predictable. So, in the long term, I'd like to have this go to governance, so we come up with some kind of policy for how and why we call these special meetings, so the public is very, very clear, on what we're doing. But I think that, I have really big concerns about this. So I see a couple council members have their hands up. Councilmember Jane.
Yeah, so the first special meeting that I recall was the December 18th special meeting. And let me give you some background on why that was urgent. Was because on December 17th, there was a appeal hearing with the judges on the CVRA. And I listened to that, a number of other council members listened to that, and it was pretty clear to me which way the judges were leaning. We had a settlement offer in hand that I thought that we needed to respond to quickly before we heard from the judges when they actually ruled, because that was time when we had some wiggle room in how we were going to settle, if we were going to settle. And so what I did was I talked to Raj Chahal. I didn't know as a new council member how to go about calling for a meeting without avoiding Brown Act. So what I did was I talked to Raj, and then we called Deanna, and then she called the other council members to see if they wanted to have a special meeting. And because it was extremely time sensitive, that's why we called that meeting. And then I believe, and maybe our city attorney can clarify this, that actually to set up a meeting, I just heard from Deanna that that's not really covered under Brown Act. But in this case, again, I didn't want to do any Brown Act violations. So I had sent a general inquiry about, the city attorney's performance evaluation should happen at the end of the year, but it didn't happen. And so, when is it going to happen? Because it was delayed. So what happened was I had just a general email query about that. And then, so just like before, when Deanna called everybody to see if they wanted to have the special meeting on the 18th, staff called me to see whether I wanted to have a special meeting. And I said, yes. So that's how it transpired. I thought it was very parallel to what happened on December 18th.
Can I just add that it's the state law that allows, it's under government code, and I've asked for staff to research that. Jenica and Brian can either answer the question on which government code it is. It's not the city charter that allows for council, for a majority of the council to set a council meeting through the request. And it was after the December meeting, when asked once again whether the meeting had been set properly, where the city attorney stated that the state law makes mention of that this is a unique case and where it's not a Brown Act in terms of the topic. So that's beyond that, as I responded to the mayor and Councilmember Watanabe's questions, the other matters I'm just not privy to how it came to be in terms of setting the meeting. But in terms of a special meeting, it's outlined by state law, and so any council policy or things of that sort would need to be influenced by the state law and aligned to the state law.
Okay, so Councilmember Jane, are you saying for this meeting and the last one? I understand the urgency of the first one because of the timing of the suit. I understand that, but these last two, so I see no urgency in them, but you're saying you just generally requested that this topic be brought up, not for
That's exactly.
not for a special meeting, but
I did not originally ask for a special meeting, but just like before, when Deanna called everyone to set up a special meeting, when somebody asked to clarify whether I wanted a special meeting, I said yes.
Okay, but you didn't originally ask for a special meeting.
I did not.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Hardy?
The same here. I knew that we had not done a performance review, and I turned in a request. And then I was answered back that they were going to set up a special meeting, and I said that was fine.
Okay. City Attorney, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I do. It sounds like at least 2 council members didn't think they were calling a special meeting, and therefore it sounds like the meeting was not properly called. And so to that extent, I would object to the meeting taking place. However, I just, on the topic, just so the other council members can understand, I really feel like I'm getting the bum's rush here because I just don't even understand why there's so much confidentiality. The normal way of having a performance review is for the mayor and I to talk about when do you want to schedule a performance review. And I, in fact, told Councilmember Hardy that on Friday, or was it Friday, Karen? Or I can't remember. Was it Friday or Thursday? And when we saw each
I
other,
think it was Thursday. I was at the council. I was at City Hall.
yeah, we saw you. I saw you at City Hall, and I told you that, and then you said you were going to call the mayor, and apparently you haven't. So, I'm just extremely confused by this because the normal process is the mayor and I just simply schedule, and I would welcome a performance review. I would welcome for you to get a lot more input about what kind of a job I'm doing than apparently the input that you've gotten. And I just think it would be the only fair thing to do would be to have a normal kind of performance review. I don't understand why we have outside counsel involved in any of this. I mean, we've never had outside counsel involved in a performance review.
I have actually City Attorney of outside counsel on. I'd like to hear from.
So
her.
I guess I just want to make my position very clear is that I would welcome a performance review. I'd welcome input to, I'd like some knowledge as to how you'd like to get input from me. I'd like to be able to give you a little bit of input on who I think you should get input from. There's a lot of people who have a lot of respect for what I do, who think I do a very good job. And I think you should hear from those people. And I think that would be the fair thing to do.
City Attorney, thank you. I'm really, my concern right now is this particular meeting, because I didn't believe that, you know, we had members that actually called for this special meeting. I understand they want performance review. We can talk about the process, but it can be on our next city council meeting as far as I'm concerned. So that was my concern, that a special meeting was actually not called for. So may I, Councilmember Watanabe, is that okay if I go to our outside counsel first? Jen?
Yeah, I can wait. I can wait.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, I'd like to hear from Jenica Maldonado, our outside counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gilmore. I did provide some legal advice to the city manager's office and did consult with the mayor earlier today on the question of what constitutes a special meeting. I'm happy to share that for reference, it's Government Code 54956 is the parameters for a special meeting. And it is quite broad. It simply says that a special meeting may be called at any time by a majority of the members of the legislative body, provided that 24 hours notice is provided. And so it doesn't have to be urgent. It typically is in practice though. And so that's what the mayor is getting at, is as a matter of custom, special meetings typically are not something that happens regularly, rather regular meetings happen regularly. So, but that's the legal definition for your reference. On the particular question of whether this meeting was properly called, I reviewed the messages that were submitted by the 4 council members. 2 appeared very unambiguously to call for a special meeting. 2 appeared that they may be calling for a special meeting, but in my opinion, required further inquiry. So I did reach out to those 2 members and asked whether it was their intent to call a special meeting or not. And they responded in the affirmative that they did intend to call a special meeting for today. And so I provided that advice to the city attorney's office, and that's why this meeting remained on calendar.
Thank you very much. I just thought I heard from both of them that originally it was not their intention to call for a special meeting, but after
Yeah, and I will admit that what they're saying now, you know, it maybe is inconsistent with what they provided me in the written responses this afternoon or this morning by email. And so things can get lost in translation. But based on the email responses I received from Council members Hardy and Jane earlier today, it appeared to me that they were intending to notice a special. And so based on that information, I conveyed to the city manager's office that I thought it was properly noticed.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, my concern is that I know you mentioned it earlier regarding the performance evaluation. Generally, the performance evaluation occurs at the end of the year to give, you know, an entire year for a good evaluation to occur. However, my understanding is that because of an investigation that was started last summer, that against are involving the city attorney, that basically stays the ability to have a performance evaluation because there is an ongoing investigation. I would like to confirm whether or not that is accurate and whether or not this meeting should be taking place today as a result of that investigation.
Ooh, I'm not sure that should have been.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't even know who to go to on that.
Can I say something, please? I'm really upset that people are talking about something like this.
Yeah,
And I don't think that's proper for anyone to even be discussing something like that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, So I just want to confirm with council members Hardy and Jane, where you just said you were not intending a special meeting, but now you are intending a special. I want to talk about this meeting going forward.
I do want to have this meeting, and that is, I was correct in saying that was not, I didn't call in my email a special meeting, but when the council called, I said, yes, that if that's what we need to have this performance review, then yes.
Councilmember Jane?
So I didn't know about a special meeting. How would I know about a special meeting? Because that would essentially violate Brown Act.
Mhm.
I had called that we needed to do a review. And then when staff called to clarify and said, do you want a special meeting? And I said, yeah.
I'm not sure that's all proper to do when they didn't call for special meetings in the first place. So I don't know what to say about all
So
of this.
I guess the city attorney needs to clarify for me.
No, I not the city attorney. Could we go to the outside counsel, please? Because this is involving the city attorney.
Well, can I just please renew my objection? I really, despite what Ms. Maldonado might have to say, it does sound to me like you violated the Brown Act in terms of arranging for the special meeting. But that's my objection.
Councilmember Jane said he didn't call for a special meeting.
Right,
so-
and that's exactly what Councilmember Hardy said to me last Friday too,
I know.
was that she didn't think she was calling for a special meeting. So
Council,
it seems like we've had a seriatim meeting to call a special meeting.
can I ask Jenica, please? Can you help? Thank you.
Sure. There does not, pardon me, I'm getting slightly interrupted. I can't speak to whether or not there was a seriatim meeting. What I can speak to is that there appeared to be intent to agendize a meeting for the purpose of the performance evaluation. Given that there was some admitted ambiguity, the question was posed, was it your intent to notice this as a special? And affirmative responses were provided. And based on that information, today's meeting did proceed. I think just as an information point for the benefit of the council, that in order to request a special meeting, you do need to call for it and ask for it. If you have questions about how to do that, you can consult with legal counsel. That's what legal counsel is there for. You can reach out to counsel and make those requests. And in this case, it appears that that was asked for.
I don't hear that, but you say so. Okay, city manager, your hand was up.
Yeah, it was up, and I'm speaking on the part of Nadine and Nora and Simrat, who noticed the meeting and who regularly process these requests. While I have not been involved in the details leading up to this, I do know that they worked with the council to put this meeting into place. I trust that they followed the regular city's process. They confirmed council availability. They confirmed that there was a quorum. And as stated in the state law, that there was a majority available that made the affirmative request for the meeting on this date and time. And so I'm purely just speaking in defense of their highly professional and good work, for which they acted appropriately based on the information that they had.
And I appreciate that. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I just, the way, again, because this type of calling for these meetings has not really happened in our past in terms of this. So it's all brand new to us, and it just keeps happening over and over. Here's an example. Here's what Councilmember Jane sent in to the city. I have a question: how to get a discussion of the city attorney's performance review agendized. Now, does that sound like he's calling for a special meeting? It doesn't to me. So Councilmember Hardy, I'd like the council to schedule a performance review for the city attorney, but it doesn't say, special closed session. I'm just saying, my whole point is this can happen at regular meetings. it can happen at regular meetings, but this particular council seems to want to go through whether or not we can all be there. And that's my concern. This is the second time I've had to, the first time you went on without me, fine, but you're prepared to do it again. So I'm just very concerned about that. Jenica, go ahead.
Just one more suggestion. To the extent
Okay.
that there is disagreement about this or people have concerns, you certainly can take a vote on whether or not you should proceed today with the meeting. And an alternative could be that in the event that you all decide that this might not be legally appropriate based on what you're hearing, you can conclude this meeting and then everyone can request this again, and then you can renotice the meeting as a special. That is an option. I appreciate that there's a lot of administrative headaches that go along with that because every time there's a meeting, much has to be done, but that is an option. I'm just trying to provide you with some practical options given the situation that is present. So I offer that.
Thank you. And I appreciate that because I think that council members, if they're going to continue to do this, which I'm hoping we can take this up as a governance issue, but if it's leaving it up to our staff to have to ask follow-up questions because the requests are so ambiguous, as I read a couple of them. The requests are so ambiguous that there should be a predictable way to request. So our staff isn't put in a very awkward position to try to interpret what the council members are saying. Is that what you're saying, Jenica, that if they put it in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that, but I also think that it's a balancing of the government code permits that the majority of a body can call for a meeting, and it doesn't require certain magic words. It just has to be clear from the intent of the request that that's what they're asking for. In practice, you can see how this might get a little complicated. And so I believe, in my opinion, that further inquiry was made and that council members Hardy and Jane said things both to me and to staff that indicated that it was their intent for this to be considered at a special as opposed to a regular meeting. And that was why we proceeded today. But certainly from the initial emails that you're referencing, which I've also seen, there was initial ambiguity that caused and required further inquiry, which is why we're in the situation that we're in now, right? It'd obviously be certainly easier if they'd phrased their request that said explicitly, I am requesting a special meeting pursuant to government code citation X.
Okay, Councilmember Park.
Yeah, so I am a little confused as to why it seems like some people want to stop this meeting, meaning it is true that it does not have to happen at this meeting, but it's also true that it can happen at this meeting, and this meeting was agendized, and we are currently in that meeting. So I think that it's curious to me that people are trying to stop the meeting that's in progress. There was a lot of other ways and a lot of other opportunity, I believe, to do that, and I can't help but think that maybe there's some political grandstanding here. At the same time, I come from the private sector, and I know of no person who thinks that they've done a good job that would forego a performance review, a regular performance review. And the fact that it did not happen, and the fact that we are, we have, it's a very important office. I think it's a very important thing. And if it's a chance to give feedback, which we don't normally get to do, it is, I don't understand why we would stop the meeting that's in progress by saying that it doesn't have to happen. By that token, there are a lot of meetings that don't have to happen, but we are in the meeting. I do not understand why we are trying to stop the meeting in progress. And if we have to have a motion to progress with the meeting, I fully support doing that as well. I will make the motion to ask if we want to go forward with this meeting.
Then go ahead, make that motion. Councilmember Park, go ahead.
Yes, I motion to proceed with this meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. I just wanted to say you might be missing the point here. The point is whether or not we have this meeting or not is whether or not the meeting was legally called for. Because I think it's important. I think even the city attorney said he doesn't fear any performance review. And that's not the point at all. The point is the council calling these special meetings when they're not specific as to calling a special meeting And especially when, you know, all members of the council aren't there. So I know certain members of the council have specifically said, but even tonight, when you go back and listen to the tape, you'll hear two members of the council say that that wasn't their original intention to call a special meeting. It's just to make it perfectly clear and make sure it's legal, because my intention was, if we don't do it tonight, I'll suggest we do it next Tuesday at a regular city council meeting. There doesn't have to be much of a delay. So that's the point. If we're not doing it legally and properly, you know, because this is highly unusual that we have all these meetings called for, I'll say, you know, again, our practice, non-emergency issues. So anyways, okay, city attorney and then Councilmember Becker.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it very clear. I'm not at all trying to prevent my getting a performance review. I had nothing to do with scheduling or not scheduling the meeting, but I'm just letting everyone know that normally the way we do this is, for example, if Councilmember Jane had simply just communicated to the mayor, don't you think we should have a performance review? Then the mayor and I would have talked about what's a good date for that. We would have talked about, you know, what's the procedure for that this year? What are we gonna, how is this gonna work? How are you gonna give me an opportunity to make a presentation? What do you want to see in a presentation? So, you know, I just would like to have a fair process, that's all. And I really don't have an objection to you even proceeding with going into closed session and talking about what is this year's performance evaluation going to look like, and how are we going to hear from Brian about his performance, and who else are we going to talk to? Or are we going to use a facilitator? How's that going to work? So as long as it's a fair process, I have no problem at all with you guys proceeding to have a conversation among yourselves about how this year's performance evaluation is going to work, and how it's going to be scheduled, and what you would expect to hear from me.
So are you removing your objection, city attorney?
Yeah, in light of Councilmember Park's motion, and you know, it seems like you're going to proceed anyway. I mean, you know, you've heard me. I don't want to prevent you from scheduling my performance evaluation, but I think it needs to be a fair one. And I hope that you will commit that if you do go into closed session, you will give fair consideration to what a fair process would look like.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Becker.
Thank you. I was just going to say whenever we're ready to call the vote, and member of the public is waiting too.
Thank you. Councilmember Park.
Yeah, so again, I didn't choose to speak until I heard most of the people that were speaking, and external legal counsel also seems to suggest that this is legal. I want to verify that very explicitly one more time. Whether this is unusual or not, is this legal?
Oh, Jenica, if you'd like to answer, sorry, I apologize.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Mayor.
People just jumping in. Go ahead.
I'd like to clarify the legal opinion. As of this afternoon, after I had confirmed in writing with Supervisors Jane and Hardy that they intended to call a special based on that communication, I advised the city manager's office that I thought the meeting was properly called as a special meeting. Now, admittedly, in real time, both Supervisors Hardy and Jane have said things since we've been in open session that are inconsistent with what they said to me on email. So I would caution that you should consider that in your decision to go forward. The question is whether it was the intent of Supervisors Hardy and Jane to notice a special meeting at the time they made the request. That is the legal question. And I might just ask your colleagues more pointedly what their intent was at the time they called the meeting to answer the question.
Okay, keeping in mind, it's, yeah. Councilmember Jane, it's on tape. Councilmember Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's where I guess I was unclear when Ms. Maldonado had contacted me. At the time that I made the request, I had no intention of having a special meeting. Once a special meeting was in the works, I was like, yeah, let's, if we can do it by a special meeting, let's have the special meeting. But my original email did not call for a special meeting. Otherwise, I would have said so specifically. So I guess I was just saying that I was unclear to Ms. Maldonado that I agreed to have a special meeting once I realized that there was one being planned.
Thank you. Councilmember Hardy?
It was the same for me. Whatever, I made a request and I didn't know if you needed a special meeting or what would happen. And when they said, would a special meeting work? I said, yes. I don't know how that's not clear.
Ms. Maldonado? Hearing
I
that,
I think that some helpful clarification has been provided here, and I think this is simply just an example of some misunderstanding on how to properly call a special meeting. And this is a learning process it's perfectly acceptable to learn as you go, especially when you're newer to council. And it appears instead that maybe there was a desire to agendize this item for discussion at some point, but not necessarily at a special meeting. And so given what is unfolding in real time, I would caution the council from proceeding, given that it doesn't appear that there were 4 requests for the special meeting at its inception. Rather, there was a misunderstanding that a special meeting was already, the requirements for it were already met, and that people were sort of tacking on to that appearance. So I would caution proceeding, given that what's clear from.
yeah, I don't
our
know what else to say about that. City Attorney, do you have something to say?
Yeah, given what I've just heard and given the fact that when I asked that if the meeting occurs, that it would be a fair evaluation, and none of the council members assured me that it would, I would have to say that I still object to this as the meeting was not properly called. But I do not object to a properly scheduled evaluation. I just think that you know, I think I deserve an evaluation and you deserve to be able to evaluate me. So, but as far as this meeting, I am concerned that there may be some ideas in some of the council members' heads that things can occur in this meeting that cannot legally occur, and not having been provided with a level of assurance that they would intend to have a fair evaluation. Any expression that I did not object, I withdraw, and I do object to this meeting going forward.
I want to simply focus on whether there was 4 members that actually called for a special meeting. Councilmember Jane?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Yeah, so I had spoken to Brian when we were originally trying to call for that special meeting on the 18th of December. And he advised me to go through Deanna to set up that meeting. But now what I'm hearing is that I am free to go talk to as many council members I want to set up my next special meeting. Is that correct?
I don't know about that. Maybe Jenica can help answer that. I don't know if it's exempt from the Brown Act.
So, I mean, I think that the government code applies, as I've indicated, to the calling of a special meeting. If you have specific questions on how to do that in a particular instance, the advisable thing is to speak with your city attorney on how to invoke that mechanism. But I will caution that, you know, speaking amongst council members to do so could be a seriatim meeting and would also be in violation of the Brown Act.
So I don't understand how we could do this if the meeting is going to be about the attorney and you're only supposed to talk to the attorney to set up a special meeting. I don't really understand.
There is no conflict with talking to me about scheduling an evaluation. Why would there be a
scheduling of a meeting is not a matter of a conflict of interest with the city attorney, regardless of the subject matter of the meeting. So you can contact your city attorney if you have questions about how to notice something for a meeting. the question about a performance evaluation, and when that happens to be the city attorney, that concerns that person's privacy rights. And so that individual, that discussion has to happen in closed session. And obviously the subject of a performance evaluation can't participate in meetings that are substantive about that person. And so for that reason, you would retain outside counsel, which the city has done in this instance, which is my law firm, to advise in that process if necessary. But the noticing of the meeting and how to do a special versus regular, that's not a substantive question and can be posed to your city attorney.
Okay, but I'm still going back to the December 18th meeting because there were not 4 council members that asked for that meeting. They did not send a specific request to ask for that meeting. What happened was I talked to the city attorney. He said, work with Deanna. She will call all the council meetings to see if they want to have a special meeting. So I don't see how that's any different than what happened this time.
City manager, your
Yeah,
hand.
I'm just, so already, as I have heard this conversation, I have instructed staff to make a form for the addition of special meetings and the government code that would be covered so that we can provide, we don't get caught up in the emails. And it's very clear when you fill out the form of the majority of the council or the four council members by state law and the charter of what is required for the meeting so that we eliminate the emails and the language around regular or special. So I think that's going to solve the problem for purposes of scheduling meetings for the council to conduct its business. I also, though, remember that when this came up in December, and this again goes to just, you know, my desire to defend staff, the question did come up as to whether we had done so appropriately. And I think this is what Councilmember Jane is getting to. And the city attorney was on record that council members in this case, because the state law is very broad and it doesn't, in terms of how do you get to a majority on a topic without talking to each other, he acknowledged the barrier and that's how a meeting can get scheduled under this unique circumstance. I just say that in that, again, I continue to restate that there's ways for us to simplify it by developing a form for the council members, just like we have the 030 policy form, but also in that that I do think that the follow-up information of the intent for special meeting, I want to say that staff did it appropriately and professionally and according to the law, but ultimately it's the council's decision. I understand either way. I want to impress upon that staff acted accordingly, but we also can do better by doing the form.
Okay, thank you. Jenica, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I just want to further reiterate that staff, in my opinion, followed the law, and based on the information that was available to staff at the time that they were noticing this meeting and up until this meeting convened, it was staff's reasonable impression that all 4 members had requested this meeting.
All right, Councilmember Park.
I have a clarification that I'd like made as well, which is there were a lot of issues going through the city manager because the city manager would not send the notices out as the city manager did previously in December. Let's say that I wanted to call a special meeting about Councilmember Jane, and there was an issue between Councilmember Jane and the city manager. Is there anything that would prevent the city manager from simply calling a meeting about Councilmember Jane, and even though the city manager would not be part of that discussion, or understanding the fact that there may be an issue between the city manager and Councilmember Jane, the subject of that meeting?
I don't know who's going to answer that.
I can answer it. There's no problem with Councilmember Jane being involved in the calling of a special meeting. I think we're getting way off topic in terms of the normal way to call a meeting is for to have a regular meeting. A special meeting called by 4 council members is an exceptional event. There's no problem with 4 council members getting together and signing a piece of paper called call of special meeting. What causes a problem is if the council members have decided ahead of the special meeting what they're going to decide at that special meeting. So if there's any conversation about we're going to call a special meeting to do X at that meeting, that's where you get into problems of, is there a seriatim meeting? So I think that's where where there's some misunderstanding. There was no reason to have a special, I can't understand why there's a special meeting to have my evaluation. I mean, it could have easily been agendized in the normal course through the mayor. And I have no objection. The mayor has no objection to me having an evaluation. So I just don't even understand why the first thought in people's head was to have a special meeting to have an evaluation. But having said that, you know, it does appear to me that the intent was not there to call a special meeting, and that it does appear that this meeting was not called in accordance with the Brown Act.
That's the whole purpose, is what was the intent behind calling this special meeting? We have 2 council members that said their intent was not to call a special meeting, but when called by the city attorney's office or city manager's office and asked if they want a special meeting, they said yes. But according to Jenica, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, the question is, what was the original intent? So I think that's pretty clear right now, but maybe it isn't. Councilmember Park, I think you still have the floor, followed by Councilmember Becker.
Yeah, so there's 2 things. Again, I didn't quite get the answer, which is I still have the question, which is if I want to call a meeting involving Councilmember Jane and the city manager has an issue with Councilmember Jane, is there anything that would prevent me from going through the city manager simply to call for the meeting? Like the city manager is not pushing for the meeting, may not be attending the meeting, may not have any say in the meeting. The city manager is simply part of the process for noticing the meeting or getting the meeting noticed to other people. I think that's
Are you asking if you could bypass her? Is that what you?
No.
I would like to answer the question, Councilmember Park.
Okay,
I
go
would,
ahead.
yes, if I felt like there was a concern on my part, I would connect the council member with the appropriate resources and just monitor the situation to make sure that the council member is being well served with their needs and their intent. So if there was, you know, one, I hope that I would never have a conflict with a council member where I'm put in this position, but if you're making a scenario-based question about me, then I want to let you know how you would be served. And I would connect you with whether it's a director, whether it's the city clerk or the city auditor, the city attorney, so that the council member has all of the resources in place so that you can continue to function as you please as a council.
And I understand that's your opinion, but I would like legally to know if there's any reason to go through that process at all. Meaning, is there anything that would prevent us going through the standard process, which seemed to be standard at the time for every other meeting, of just going through the city manager to get the noticing done?
Jenica, go ahead.
Well, I would defer, I would just defer to the city attorney on this specific question. This is his body that he typically advises, and I think he's answered the question.
Okay, so I heard that there was no problem with going through the city manager to notice a meeting about a council member, Sudge Jane, even if the city manager had an issue, a personal issue with council member Sudge Jane.
I would say the same answer. There's no problem.
Okay, so the other thing I'm going to point out is I think that council members do understand how to put an item on the agenda. Like putting an item on the agenda does not require a letter from 4 different city council members. Whether the intent was to have I think the intent was to have a meeting as soon as possible for this. And they went through the process of sending letters, understanding that we needed 4 letters. And I think that does indicate that there was an understanding that this was a meeting, an item outside of standard agendization of an item. Now, is that true?
I think Councilmember Park, you can speak for yourself, but other council members are going to have to speak for themselves as to.
And that's why I'm asking the question, which is why I'm not telling you what's true. I'm asking the question.
Yes, well, I think the council members have articulated their own positions. and you have articulated yours.
Understood, but again, the question is, it's not even for the council members. I think there's an understanding that to put an item on the agenda does not require 4 city council members to send in a letter. In this case, it was explicit, and there was the request that 4 city council members submit a letter, which tells you, whether maybe it's not as direct, but it tells you that this is a special meeting. Is that what are the optics of that kind of request? Understanding that it does not require, 4 letters to put an item on the agenda.
I'm very confused, so I don't know who would want to answer this question because I don't understand it. Jenica, would you like to take a stab at the question?
I think that I'm also confused by the question. I think that collectively, the city attorney and I have both provided some explanation about the requirements for a special meeting, and the city attorney has spoken to how to notice matters for a regular meeting. If your question concerns noticing matters for a regular meeting, that obviously is different than the government code section that I cited. I'm going to let the city attorney speak. He has his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, Councilmember Park, you asked about the optics of it. The optics of it are that there was a Brown Act violation, because I don't know what the urgency would be to have an evaluation of the city attorney. I mean,
I'll just say for the record, I disagree that there was a Brown Act violation, because at the time that the administration noticed this meeting, it was under the impression that this was properly called for. So I disagree with that.
No, I'm not. I don't think we're in disagreement. I think the issue is, was there a serial meeting about calling a special meeting? In other words,
that I don't know.
And that was just simply in response to Councilmember Park's question about the optics. Since I'm an observer, the optics to me were that I don't understand the urgency, and therefore I'm concerned about that as something that motivated 4 people to think that there was an urgency to have a special meeting.
And I would like to ask what the optics are that we have the city attorney giving an opinion that may be based on personal interest. So I think that, again, one of the reasons why having external counsel is useful, but if external counsel is always going to defer to regular counsel, then I kind of don't see the benefit as largely as we could have the benefit.
I'm not deferring to your city attorney. I'm providing independent legal advice, but you are collectively as a group asking questions, some of which are specific to the specific retention, which is this particular meeting, and the need for potential need for legal guidance in the context of determining process for the city attorney's evaluation. And then you're asking questions that sort of go beyond the scope of this particular retention. And so in that respect, I am deferring to your existing city attorney where it seems fit. I can appreciate though why that seems confusing, but that's sort of the role and why I'm doing that. But we're here to provide independent outside legal advice, and I'm happy to provide that advice in the context of a meeting or in the context of a privileged conversation.
Thank you. I need to move on. We have to decide whether we're going to proceed ahead with this meeting. Councilmember Hardy.
Well, I don't like that people have looked in my head to see what I was thinking, because I asked for a performance review, whether that I did not know I was supposed to say specifically a special meeting, but my understanding was I just needed to ask for that so that we could agendize it. Then I was asked, is this time will work for you? And I said, yes. So by having, when I hear outside counsel says this has been properly noticed, and Councilmember Park's motion is to say, is this what we want to do and proceed? Then I think we should.
Okay, so you're saying now, you originally, when you sent your email in, this is the key to this. When you sent your email in, are you saying now that you knew you were calling for a special meeting?
Not necessarily. If we need to call a meeting in 24 hours, then we'll make a motion to do that, if that's what we have to do.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Jane?
So I'll just say now that I never asked for a special meeting. And my intent was not to have a special meeting. In my email, it was when staff called me and said, you know, do you want a special meeting? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine with me. But so if on that basis we need to cancel this meeting, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I do want to talk to what the city attorney just said. The city attorney is suggesting that there was a Brown Act violation when this meeting was set up. But then he just said that 4 council members could get together and sign a piece of paper to request a meeting. So how could there possibly have been a Brown Act violation anywhere along the way? Because we have not decided how we're going to proceed with the evaluation, what the result of the evaluation is. I don't see how he could suggest that there was even a Brown Act violation.
City Attorney, please answer that.
It was the issue of urgency that gave me the concern that there could be a Brown Act violation. Because I don't see any reason for urgency. And urgency makes it sound like you've already got an idea in your head about what you want to do urgently. And to the extent that there was a shared communication of a need for urgent action, then that could create the specter of a possible Brown Act violation. Because the Brown Act violation is not the calling of the meeting. The Brown Act violation would be making a decision before the meeting, collectively making a decision that there needs to be an urgent action before the meeting. So that's all I was saying. I'm not saying there was a Brown Act violation. I'm just saying that your expressions of urgency and some of the things you said in your email that I wasn't aware of, that somehow it had been delayed by something. I wasn't aware of anything like that. So I just think that I'm perfectly fine with you guys having a meeting to set up a evaluation. And all I ask for is that your consideration of that evaluation and the process for it is that it be a fair process and allow me to make a presentation.
Okay, we heard that before, so
Okay.
thank you. Councilmember Becker.
Here we are at 58 minutes now, and I just continue to feel like this is political grandstanding, and it was properly noticed. And it's funny because we go back to that CVRA thing that I think Suds was talking about. I got a phone call from Deanna because, do you want to have this meeting? Yes, I do. So it's almost the same exact situation. They contacted Karen and they contacted Suds. They said, absolutely. So I don't see what the problem is. Let's go take the member of the public and let's go to the vote and let's take care of this. Let's go.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor to proceed. But based on the information from at least Councilmember Jane, that it was not his original intent to call this special meeting. May I ask Ms. Maldonado, what is your recommendation moving forward on this with that disclosure?
My recommendation is that you conclude the meeting and you renotice it if that is the desire of at least a majority of this body at a later date.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I wasn't really.
Go ahead, Councilmember Becker.
That's funny because we go back about a month ago, it was the same situation. Oh, this meeting wasn't noticed properly. And then we had technical delays and then we had the meeting the next night. I mean, I'm sorry, but this sounds worse than a Hollywood script from House of Cards. I mean, it's so obvious and our public is watching. If you go watch comments on Facebook and YouTube, it's obvious. It's very obvious. And that's just my personal opinion, but not a good look for our city.
What is a good look for our city is that we follow the law and we follow due process.
We are following the law and we have 4 letters, Mayor Gilmore.
Okay. I'm going to defer to the advice of our outside counsel based upon the information. So I guess, well, I'll go to the public and then we're going to have to vote on whether or not we conclude this meeting. Unless, Ms. Maldonado, if this meeting isn't, I'm not sure how to proceed ahead. Do I continue on with going to the public and then take the vote? Or would you recommend I take a vote since we have a member that has said that this meeting it wasn't his intention? So,
I think you should take public comment. You're here,
Okay.
you're at the
Okay.
meeting, and then you need to
thank you.
you'll need to mechanize a formal action to conclude the meeting, so.
Conclude the meeting and then reschedule if that's the will of the council. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. All right, so members of the public, Bob, go ahead, Bob.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd like one point of clarification, if I may. I actually have two things that I'd like to speak to now. First of all, what has come up within this last 59 minutes about having the meeting or not, and then the actual thing I was going to speak about having the meeting. Will there be public comment for both if this meeting should go forward? And then if it does go forward, will we have public comment about the meeting?
I think this is, Bob, I think this would be your time to say what you want to say. You know what? I do have a motion and a second, so I can call for public comment on the motion.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, Mayor, does that mean there will be two opportunities to speak?
Right now and right after the motion.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Okay.
First of all, I do have some comments about what I wanted to speak originally on, but listening to this last 58 minutes has me infuriated. I want to go back to what Councilmember Jane said earlier about the December 17th meeting, special meeting that was called by, I noticed my time's almost over, if I could start again, about Councilmember Jane's December 17th calling that special meeting. That special meeting was called by 4 council members. That special meeting was in violation of the ADA laws. I am the one that brought that attention. After it was brought to the city's attention, every other issue besides the CVRA lawsuit was set aside. But Councilmember Park and the rest of the, a majority of the council members voted to hold a meeting in violation of the ADA laws. So let's be clear on that. Secondly, I would like to know, based on that, hearing is an impairment that ADA laws comply with. I would like to know who the heck Councilmember Becker during this meeting has been having a profanity-laced conversation with. Many of the public can read lips, and I am looking at him right now, and I can go verbiage of what he has said. I am making a public records request to have this Zoom meeting available to me so I can put that forward. His verbiage, his words
If you
are
could keep
disgusting.
your comments to the mayor, please.
Oh, I
Thank
am,
you.
Mayor. I'm making a formal request to have this so other people can see, and then people who could read lips, and I will have this translated to see the profanities that he's been stating during this whole meeting.
All right,
Thank you very much,
Thank
and I
you
will
very much.
comment about the other thing later.
thank you. Sam, go ahead, Sam. Go ahead. You're muted, Sam. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Wonderful. Great. I
Go
think
ahead.
the meeting was called according to the procedures established should proceed. Then I have the additional question for City Attorney Mr. Doe. Here he is. We all knew Santa Clara City lost the CVRA appeal case in the court. If the city had a chance to reach a settlement agreement with the plaintiff's attorney before the court's ruling, appeal court's ruling, the city would have saved millions of dollars of city taxpayers' money. My question for Mr. Doe, here it is. We read the news that you receive a letter of settlement from the CVRA plaintiff's attorney in early December of 2020, prior to the appeal hearing, but you didn't tell the city council about this settlement offer. So, Mr. Do, could you please confirm to the public if it is true or not true? If it is true, you should be disciplined, including possible termination from the city attorney's position, since you violated the State Bar of California Code of Conduct, which specifically is the rule 1.4.1, communication of settlement offers without disclosing the settlement offer to your client, which is the city council. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you, Sam. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to the council? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Councilmember Hardy, you have your hand up.
I'm wondering if the maker of the motion would consider, just because of what outside counsel has said, changing the motion to calling a special meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock, because we could do 24 hours notice, and then there's no concerns. Would the maker of the motion consider that?
I would accept that.
I'll accept it as a second.
Checking calendar, city attorney?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Mr. Liu requested whether I ever withheld a settlement offer from the city council, and I can emphatically state publicly that I never did such a thing.
Okay, thank you. Hold on a second. Can I ask based on the motion, city manager, are we okay? Is there any conflicts there with anything with the city? I don't have anything on my calendar for a 6 o'clock meeting tomorrow. Oh, because it's 5:07. 5:30 meeting tomorrow? No, 6 is fine. 6 o'clock, city manager, are you on? Do we have any? Oh, you're checking, I'm sure. Does that give you enough time? Does it need to be 6:30 or later?
We will publish it.
Is that enough time for the city clerk's office to get something out?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Motion and a second. I think that's the right thing to do. So do we have any comments from council members? Any members of the public like to speak on this? Bob, go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me speak earlier. I will save the original comments I had till tomorrow night's meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, motion and a second, and that includes adjourning this meeting.
Mayor,
Yes.
we do have one other hand raised.
Oh, Councilmember Vice Mayor Chahal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So one thing which needs clarification going forward, like I am very confused and I think so are my colleagues. Like if this thing has to be gone through the city manager or somebody at the city who wants to, let's say I send a request for special meeting and somebody has to contact other 3 or 4 council members. Do you want it? These council members have to be contacted by somebody. So how are we trying to avoid serial meeting? And whole process seems to be very confusing to me. I really need some guidance on that from Jenica or from my own city attorney.
Yeah,
Like,
I have an answer for that. I think you guys should, as the mayor suggested, go to the governance committee and come up with a policy of what's the best way to call a special meeting by for council members if you're not going to go to the mayor. The mayor has called special meetings in the past. Most of the time, if there's an urgency, the mayor will call the special meeting. And so the question is, you know, when outside that process, if you want to have four people do it, I think we can work out a very clear process for how to do that. And I suggest the best way to do that is outside of any issue, so that we're not so that there's no baggage involved in what the best process is. And then we can just come up with a good process so that we're all assured that we understand the process and that we're avoiding any possibility of anybody accusing anybody of having a Syriana meeting. So that I would suggest is something you should refer to the governance committee and work out a policy so that everybody knows what's the best way to do it.
Thank you. Jenica Maldonado?
And I would like to speak when appropriate.
Jenica?
Well, yes, as has been said, if you're having a discussion that's not substantive about scheduling alone, you can communicate with one another. Now, as your city attorney has very properly advised, lines can get blurred very quickly and it can become risky that you might be talking substance, which is why lawyers always caution their public sector clients to not speak outside a meeting. But you can communicate amongst yourselves for scheduling purposes only to figure out, do we have enough people to call a special meeting? And then I would defer to the city manager's office on if there's a form that can easily facilitate that process to make that more streamlined and clear. That's certainly a great idea. But in terms of the law, it only needs to be a request by a member, and preferably in writing so that it's clear. And it should include the words, I'm asking for a special meeting. That would avoid this whole situation in the future.
And if I may,
Go ahead, Raj. Go ahead.
And that request, let's say council member X asks for a special meeting for particular agenda. Who will convey that letter to all other 6 council member or the mayor? Do you want it?
I suspect your clerk could do that.
Clerk.
Once they've received them
Perfect.
all, they can say, well, now I have sufficient number, and they can distribute them, or they could distribute them as they're received. That's more of a mechanics question. I would defer to the city manager about that.
Okay, that was my question, if clerk can do that. And I'll be ready to hear from city manager.
Yeah, she's next. Go ahead, city manager.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify what I'm hearing because I want to make sure that we are all on the same page going forward together. First, I want to clarify that it is either the mayor that can call a special meeting or 4 council members. I know that it was suggested that the council work through the mayor, but we're implementing the charter and the state law, and staff remains neutral from that perspective. I also, for purposes of going forward, I am going to pull the transcript from December 18th because it's at that meeting that my staff implemented the directions that were publicly stated to clarify how that meeting was set. And so I just continue. I know that I have staff that will feel as if they did something wrong. That's not the case. We followed directions based on public comments that were made by the city attorney in terms of how to get a special meeting set. And that's what they put in place. And that's why we had this meeting today. But I too want to bring clarity around this because I don't want for the council to be found in this position again. We'll put the form together, but I want to start by the instructions that we were provided because I know Nora, I know Simrat, and I know Nadine's quality of work. And they went through extraordinary measures to make sure that the council had what it needed to have a legally noticed meeting with a quorum according to the charter and according to the state law. So we'll start with the transcript and we'll go from there through governance and I have to say that I can't emphasize that enough, and that we acted diligently according to the law and based on the instructions provided publicly about how to get a special meeting scheduled the last time this matter came up as to whether the city manager's staff had done the appropriate thing or not.
Thank you. Jenica Maldonado?
On the city manager's question regarding whether the mayor is authorized to also call a special meeting, the answer is yes. The government code, again, it's government code section 54956A, provides a special meeting may be called at any time by the presiding officer of the legislative body of a local agency or by a majority of the members of the legislative
Right.
body.
It was just suggested that whenever there's a special meeting that you work through the mayor, and the law and the charter do not require that unless that's the desire of the full council. And so because I am very particular with the rules to make sure that we're not accused of later doing something wrong. And I just want to be very clear as we go forward.
Okay, so I get the clarification. As of now, there will be a new form which will, especially you have to take a special meeting and then the city clerk, assistant city clerk will get that request to all the council members and the mayor and take if they want it or not, period. And that will not be a Brown Act violation because each council member is not discussing among themselves what is all about. And that is the procedure we are trying to follow. Thank you. I understand that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. I see we have another public member. Guest, go ahead. Guest.
Hi, I don't understand if this was properly noticed. There's no violation of the Brown Act. Why are you turning this into a kangaroo court? Why are you not meeting to discuss the subject at hand? Why are we playing favorites and making this such a game? This is disgusting, what is going on right now. Absolutely disgusting. It shows the absolute favoritism, Lisa, that you have. It shows that you are not acting even-handedly as mayor, and perhaps you need to be censored for your actions right now. It's been properly noticed. There's no violations. This meeting should go forward. And Suds, if it was not your intent, but you were forced to do it by the city manager, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter if you intended it to be a special meeting or not. You wanted a meeting and you were forced to have someone call it a special meeting. You just wanted a damn meeting. So have the damn meeting. And this outside counsel, why are you sucking up and not giving independent information to the council? I mean, this is just a kangaroo court once again. You guys are just a textbook example of how a city can be run badly and violate everything that a city can do, everything wrong that a city can do wrong. Have the damn meeting. Suds, even if you didn't intend it for a special meeting, don't you want the meeting? Please clarify that you want the meeting or you don't want the meeting. It doesn't matter what label they've hung on it. Stop trying to duck what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, Debbie, go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you very much, Mayor and City Council. I guess, you know, I came in to this a little bit late, so I didn't hear how the meeting started out. But I guess I'm a little appalled that we keep calling special meetings. To begin with, why are we not taking care of business during regular city council meetings? It seems like, you know, I'm forever hearing about special meetings and it really needs to stop. I don't know what the special meeting was about. I missed it. Obviously, it was something, I'm assuming that Suds felt it was important enough to call a special meeting. Do we need to talk about that publicly right now for people to hear what's going on? You know, I said this was the most dysfunctional city council I've ever seen, and I stand behind my word. Karen, you sit back there and don't say a word, but just side with the whatever group you decide you want to side with. You know, and Parks, I don't even know if he's on this call. I can't see his face.
Your comments to the mayor, Debbie, if that's okay, through the mayor, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You know, it just seems like you guys are so dysfunctional. I don't even understand who this Jenica is. I'm assuming she's an attorney of some sort. And my assumption is that the new city council members are trying to oust Doyle. And I think that needs to stop. I don't understand why you guys are not coming together as a team. You're certainly making yourself look bad. The people that voted you into office are going to be taking action against them for what you're doing. You don't think people aren't noticing your behavior? They do notice. So it needs to stop, and it needs to stop right now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. So I just want to make it clear that because of the intentions of one or more of council members, that they didn't intend a a special meeting for today out of abundance of caution. We're setting the meeting for tomorrow. And I understand, I think the city manager, it has to be a little bit later because we're still here talking about it.
Yeah,
So-
we committed to 6 o'clock at near 5 o'clock and it's now near 5:30, so we need extra time. So we'll make that 6:30 so staff has enough time to sufficiently
Okay,
publish.
Thank you. And again, no fault of our city staff in any way, shape or form. Who made the motion? Was it? Can we make the motion for 6:30 tomorrow instead of 6?
Yes, I will agree to that change.
Thank you, Councilmember Park. And who was the second?
I was.
Councilmember Becker.
You agree with the 6:30 tomorrow? Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second for 6:30 tomorrow.
Mayor,
Yes.
is it the same noticing? Is it going to be the same noticing and the same process?
I think it's the full council now ordering the meeting. Is this how it's noticed? As a
Well,
full council?
I think that's the thing a lot of the public's asking is this going to be another closed session or is this going to be open session? Because this was, I believe, was a closed session.
Yeah, I think we're continuing it tomorrow to close session. That's my understanding, everyone.
Mayor, what I would suggest is following the vote, you just simply sign the normal call of the special
Yeah.
meeting. That
Or-
would be the,
yeah,
that would be the easiest way of doing it.
Yeah, I'll sign it. That's fine if that's the will of the council. Tomorrow, closed session, same thing. It's just properly noticed this time. All right, we have a motion and a second. Assistant City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Watanabe,
No.
Vice Mayor Shahal,
Yes.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Councilmember Jane,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore.
Yes, so that passes 6-1. And so that's to schedule this meeting for tomorrow. May I ask, Jenica, do we have to do anything more or do we have to adjourn this meeting? It wasn't set properly, so I don't know how we move ahead with the rest of this thing.
I would just adjourn the meeting at this point.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So
Motion,
moved.
so move. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Park, second by Councilmember Jane. Assistant City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Watanabe,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shahal,
Yes.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Councilmember Jane,
Sorry, yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.